What's up, cool people? My name's Matt, aka That Random Christian Gamer. Welcome to tonight's live stream. Okay, I didn't necessarily choose what I'm doing tonight after the Bible study because of it being Halloween recently. It just kind of lines up that we're cleaning a Halloween house in PowerWash Simulator. But yeah, so Bible study is going to be first, per the usual, of course. We'll be looking at 2 Chronicles 31 and 32, which still, at least the first of those chapters, if not both, still have Hezekiah as king, so we'll sort of be continuing things on that front. Anyway, it's like my brain wanted me to try to think of something else to say, but then I couldn't find any other words, so I just said it that way. Anyway, all right. Yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to say right now, at least as far as what's going on in tonight's stream. If I had some, more obviously Halloween-themed background music to start things off, I probably would have done that, but I don't. At least nothing that I know is, nothing that I'm pretty sure is on the copyright-friendly side of things. Right. I always forget to have my stuff ready for rolling dice for random exercise. Give me a sec. All right. We have 2 requests from Seth for random exercise. I'm pretty sure if I hadn't capped it off at 2, there would be even more. Alrighty. Get exercise notes at the ready just so I can remember what's what. Okay. So, exercise number 1 will be number 4, jumping jacks. Okay. I could do quite a few of those, so let's see how many I gotta do in a set. Sets of 4. And minimum, how many sets of 4? Man, okay, hold up. I just rolled 3 4s in a row. How'd that happen? You go away for a sec. I'm pulling out another one. Pulling out another die for the next roll, just because I'm sus of the 3 4s in a row. But I'll still keep that for now. So, jumping jacks, sets of 4 with a minimum of 16. Next exercise. Are you kidding me? I pulled out another die. I'm not doing... I mean, I could do more jumping jacks, but I would probably just do more jumping jacks anyway in the same thing. So, we're going to re-roll that. Okay. Got a 5 this time. Planking. And... that's a 3. So, I'll be doing at least 30 seconds of planking. There we go. And looks like Twitch will be running some ads here pretty soon, whether or not I start them. So I guess we could get those rolling now, and I'll pin the exercise comment in the chat. And then, yeah, we'll hop into the Bible study after the Twitch ads roll. Oh, before that, though, I guess, quick few shout-outs, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Just verbal shout-outs, not, like, digital. But, yeah, Seth's on a 5-stream watch streak on Twitch, so I think that's honestly a first for the channel. So I appreciate your loyalty, your consistency, and all that, Seth. Also, I think last Friday's stream resulted, or I don't know, sometime that day, there was a follow on Twitch from Ashborn48. Day before that, which would have been 1 week ago, we also got follows from Marzeliax and One Grumpy Boy, who we actually raided last week. So, yeah, thanks to all you people and anyone out there who supports what I do here. I realize I'm a small fry in the, online community, and you have plenty of other people you could watch. So, any support, viewing, engagement, any of that kind of stuff, I appreciate. Okay. Ads are rolling on Twitch. Have been for a little bit now, actually. I'm going to go ahead and have this ready for when those end. Alright. So, how y'all YouTube people doing? Or anyone on Twitch who just joined in and isn't in an ad break? I've had an alright week, but more good than bad, I'd say. Not too much else to say about it. Alright. So, I believe we are pretty much ready to go here for Bible study. Sorry, just adjusting microphone a tiny bit. Okay. Let's go ahead and hop on in. So, we are currently looking at 2 Chronicles chapter 31. So, in the midst of the recap, essentially, that is 1st and 2nd Chronicles, we have gotten to the point where Hezekiah is king of Judah, and it was essentially mentioned in the previous chapter, chapter 30, that at this point, the other kingdom of Israel, the one that included pretty much all the tribes except Judah and Benjamin, I guess, that had been conquered by the Assyrians. Thus, there was perhaps a little less hesitation on Hezekiah's part to invite those who were still, descendants of Jacob, part of the Israelite genealogy in some way, or ancestry, you might say. Anyway, those who were at least somewhat connected as part of God's chosen people, he had invited them to celebrate the Passover, which they hadn't done in a long time. And that was after just kind of like reopening the temple and fixing it up and pretty much doing his best to get people back on track, or at least start getting people back on track with following God, worshiping him, obeying these commands, and all that kind of stuff. So, we continue see what else Hezekiah does here in chapter 31. So here we go. When the festival ended, that being the Passover festival, the Israelites who attended went to all the towns of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, and they smashed all the sacred pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and removed the pagan shrines and altars. After this, the Israelites returned to their own towns and homes. Hezekiah then organized the priests and Levites into divisions to offer the burnt offerings and peace offerings, and to worship and give thanks and praise to the Lord at the gates of the temple. The king also made a personal contribution of animals for the daily morning and evening burnt offerings, the weekly Sabbath festivals, the monthly new moon festivals, and the annual festivals as prescribed in the law of the Lord. In addition, he required the people in Jerusalem to bring a portion of their goods to the priests and Levites so they could devote themselves fully to the law of the Lord. I am guessing this portion of their goods that it describes here was like the actual, written in the commandments, regular tithe type offerings. Like the people were supposed to give portions of their crops, their flocks and herds, basically any animals that they had, all pretty much everything that they owned. A portion of that was supposed to go to the priests and the Levites, since the priests and Levites didn't have their own land and their lives were essentially dedicated to serving the people and God, or like, I don't know how else to word that, but like basically helping serve the people and, doing the things that they would do for God. Anyway, so basically, after the Passover festival ended, people tore down a bunch of monuments, altars, shrines, all sorts of things like that, to other gods that weren't the Lord, the God of Israel. And then they went home. Now, it mentioned Ephraim and Manasseh in there, but like Ephraim and Manasseh were two of the other tribes. So like, did people from Judah go to those areas and help the other Israelites tear things down? Maybe. Or those two tribes might have just helped each other with that. In any case, only after a bunch of this tearing down of things does everyone go back home. And then, long story short, from the following few verses, Hezekiah is doing more things to follow the law and make sure that other people of Judah follow the law. Meaning God's law, of course. And he's even giving some of his own stuff, which he should anyway, as per the tithe kind of stuff that I mentioned earlier. But he's giving some of his own stuff to make sure that there are regular offerings. Kind of leading by example in that way. Okay. I didn't even look at how long this chapter is. Not super long, but still, let's continue with verse 5. When the people of Israel heard these requirements, they responded generously by bringing the first share of their grain, new wine, olive oil, honey, and all the produce of their fields. They brought a large quantity, a tithe of all they produced. The people who had moved to Judah from Israel, and the people of Judah themselves, brought in the tithes of their cattle, sheep, and goats, and a tithe of the things that had been dedicated to the Lord their God, and they piled them up in great heaps. They began piling them up in late spring, and the heaps continued to grow until early autumn. When Hezekiah and his officials came and saw these huge piles, they thanked the Lord and his people Israel. "Where did all this come from?" Hezekiah asked the priests and Levites. And Azariah the high priest, from the family of Zadok, replied, "Since the people began bringing their gifts to the Lord's temple, we have had enough to eat and plenty to spare. The Lord has blessed his people, and all this is left over." Okay, pausing there for a bit. So, in response to, Hezekiah telling the people to offer their tithes and things like that they were supposed to, they follow that, and not only seem to follow it, but almost go beyond probably what was necessary for them to give, given the huge piles that it mentions developing. But the tithe wasn't necessarily a specific amount. I mean, it's generally assumed to have been about 10%, possibly because of the origins of the word tithe. I'm not real sure on that, though. But, I mean, obviously the people could give more to God and or the priests and Levites than just the minimum. The minimum that was expected, I should say. So, yeah, and note that it's the first share for things like grain, new wine, bunch of the things that would be produced by their crops. And that's what it was supposed to be. The offerings and tithes were supposed to be high quality things that meant something. And even just the fact of it being the first share means, that they were making sure to give to God first before they worried about taking care of themselves. So, yeah, it's... given all that, I mean, yeah, they were kind of supposed to do that, but the sense that I get from reading this is that they kind of went beyond what was expected of them. There's a note there in verse 7. Sorry. So, begin piling them up in late spring. Heaps continued to grow until early autumn. Hebrews says in the third month was when it started, was when they started piling them up. And it went until the seventh month. The ancient Hebrew lunar calendar... Sorry, the third month of the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar usually occurs within the months of May and June. The seventh month usually occurs within September and October. Because Hezekiah had pretty much reopened the temple in the first month, which it said was kind of March time frame. Or March to April-ish. And then they celebrated the Passover in the second month, which would have been April to May. Now, third month, kind of May to June time frame. And now it was the way that it's written in the Hebrew basically says that it was about 4 months that these heaps of tithes were building up. Which, if you're going from late one season, you go through the entirety of the next season, which was summer, and into the early part of the following season. Yay, logic and math and stuff. So, yeah, lots of things given to the priests and Levites from the rest of the people. I'm trying to think. It mentioned, okay, people who had moved to Judah from Israel. So, some of the other Israelites that had been part of the other kingdom, probably some of those who had initially come to the temple and been part of the Passover festival, some of them actually stayed in Judah, which was the very thing that the kings of the rest of Israel kind of wanted to avoid while they were still even a thing, while that kingdom existed. But, you know, that was essentially allowed to happen at this point because that kingdom had been conquered. And that was part of the reason why a Passover like that hadn't really happened in such a long time. Because the other kings didn't want their people going down to Judah. Anyway, kind of on a bit of a tangent, let me bring it back around and move along to verse 11. Hezekiah ordered that storerooms be prepared in the temple of the Lord. When this was done, the people faithfully brought all the gifts, tithes, and other items dedicated for use in the temple. Conaniah, the Levite, was put in charge, assisted by his brother Shimei. The supervisors under them were Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah. These appointments were made by King Hezekiah and Azariah, the chief official in the temple of God. Korah, son of Imnah the Levite, who was the gatekeeper at the east gate, was put in charge of distributing the voluntary offerings given to God, the gifts, and the things that had been dedicated to the Lord. His faithful assistants were Eden, Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah. They distributed the gifts among the families of priests in their towns by their divisions, dividing the gifts fairly among old and young alike. They distributed the gifts to all males 3 years old or older, regardless of their place in the genealogical records. The distribution went to all who would come to the Lord's temple to perform their daily duties according to their divisions. They distributed gifts to the priests who were listed by their families in the genealogical records, and to the Levites 20 years old or older who were listed according to their jobs and their divisions. Food allotments were also given to the families of all those listed in the genealogical records, including their little babies, wives, sons, and daughters, for they had all been faithful in purifying themselves. I'm going to pause there a little bit, actually. Okay, so, because of the overwhelming heaps and piles of things coming in because of the tithes, Hezekiah ordered that they make storerooms to keep these items, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm like, I need a general category for... So So they made storerooms to keep things from the tithes and the gifts and all that. And then they were distributed because, I mean, some of them would have had to go to different towns throughout Judah because not all the priests and Levites necessarily lived in the same spot. They didn't all live right by the temple. They were spread out a bit so that they could more easily, minister to people throughout the land rather than have all of those people go to the one central location at the temple in Jerusalem. It made it less travel for the more common things, the more common offerings and sacrifices, tithes, and all that kind of stuff. So all of this stuff that was brought in was distributed to those various priests and Levites throughout the land. And then it's just kind of describing... Sorry. And then it's just kind of describing how those got distributed and to whom. And so, yes, it went to the priests and Levites who were listed as, descendants of Aaron and the other Levite clans. But, I guess, possibly because there was so much, it got distributed not just directly to the priests and Levites, but to their families as a whole. As long as they had any connection to that and to those ancestral lines, that there was stuff distributed to them. So, and then it mentions at the end they had all been faithful in purifying themselves. They probably more so being the actual priests and Levites, not all of their families. Because, that would obviously make a difference in their service to God for the people. They were supposed to make sure that they purified themselves before performing these duties. Because they were sacred duties. Okay. Last few verses here, starting with 19. As for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who were living in the open villages around the towns, men were appointed by name to distribute portions to every male among the priests and to all the Levites listed in the genealogical records. In this way, King Hezekiah handled the distribution throughout all Judah, doing what was pleasing and good in the sight of the Lord his God. In all that he did in the service of the temple of God, and in his efforts to follow God's laws and commands, Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly. As a result, he was very successful. Okay, that part was kind of short. More about the distribution. I guess I thought it had mentioned the priests already, but maybe it hadn't. Distributed gifts among the families of priests in their town. Maybe that's kind of describing they started nearby and spread out from there, kind of thing. In the open villages around the towns. So they probably went to I don't know if they're major towns necessarily, but more directly the towns that the priests and Levites would probably have been serving in And then after going to the towns, they spread to, or they went to the other villages nearby. You know, villages obviously being a bit smaller than the main towns. They had enough not just to go to the towns, but to the villages outside the towns, and even distribute portions to the priests and Levites living in the less populated areas. And now, after all of this stuff with opening the temple, celebrating the Passover, and bringing in these tithes, seemingly for the first time in a while, and then distributing those to the priests and Levites, you know, all of this was stuff that was supposed to be done all along. The temple was supposed to be open the whole time. The Passover should have been celebrated annually. The tithes were supposed to be collected every year. Possibly even multiple times a year, just depending on, like, you know, harvest times and what all crops were being grown and other things produced, I guess. But, yeah. All of that was still technically just following God's law. But, because Hezekiah was, you know, putting in effort to have the people follow these laws, that things went well. It says he was very successful. In what exactly, it does not say. Maybe there will be more on that in other chapters. But yeah, anyway, that kind of wraps up chapter 31 here. Hello, Owl. Yeah. What is up indeed? All right. So, got another chapter to go here for the Bible study. This one's a little bit longer, but definitely feel free to still chat and stuff. How am I? I am doing pretty well. Not too much to complain about, really. Had a decent week at work. Got other things done that I wanted to. Kind of helped out a friend of mine who really needed some help. So that's like, even if I take a slight financial hit for that, I don't know if that's even the best way to put it. Even if I'm, you know, giving of my own things, including money, I don't know. I still always feel good helping people. And I'm not in such a tight financial spot that I can't help somebody out in that way every once in a while. All right. Yeah, I guess we'll get rolling. Seems to be that time of year. You're like the fifth person I've talked to in 3 days that has told me that they have a friend going through hard times. Yeah, this I don't think has much of anything to do with the time of year. It's I'm not going to get into a whole lot of details, but it's a friend of mine from when I lived in Texas, and let's just say she has been through a lot. And this is not even the first time in her life that she has been through a lot. But long story short, she's on the brink of some serious financial hardship. So, yeah, just found it within my ability to give a little bit, help her out, and just kind of felt like something I should do. But yeah, I will also grant, though, that more and more people seem to be struggling these days. There's, I mean, like a handful of people just this year that I'm connected with in some way or another, including like more online connections, you might say, fellow streamers and content creators and things like that. You know, just all dealing with some sort of financial hardship. But yeah. Anyway, all right. So I suppose I will continue on with the next chapter of Bible study, even though it seems there's a decent chance of running into an ad break partway through. Oh well. Alrighty. 2 Chronicles 32. So Hezekiah is still king over Judah. Things have been going well. Reopened the temple, celebrated the Passover the way it was supposed to be done for the first time in a long time. And then just last chapter, they essentially reinstituted the tithe, you know, basically regular giving that the people were supposed to contribute from what they had to help provide for the priests and Levites who, you know, did all the stuff in the temples, or the temple and other places where offerings were made. And yeah, that was kind of the main thing that happened in the last chapter. So I don't really know if there's too much else to say to kind of introduce this chapter here. It's part of that kind of recap again that is 1st and 2nd Chronicles. So honestly, a lot of this has been mentioned already in previous books of the Bible, but it was being repeated for those who had been exiled or otherwise, you know, weren't living in the land that God had promised for their people. Sorry, real quick. You know when you research certain things to a point where you hear words that even not in that context, your brain still takes it as like your brain associates a word with a certain thing. So like, even when you hear it elsewhere, you still think of the thing that you're used to it being part of. I guess that happens sometimes for me. I don't know if it's necessarily research so much in my case, but yeah. Shoot, even something as simple as saying, let's get down to business, and your mind immediately goes to Mulan and taking out, defeating the Huns then. Temple and tithe just went off with alarm bells in my mind. I've been watching a lot about an ex-Mormon lately, so I heard them and my brain went, cult? Yeah, I wouldn't so much have referred to this as a cult as it was happening in the Bible, really in general, but including especially this particular part of the Old Testament. Like, that was just kind of where the people went to, you know, do a lot of the big festivals, worship God. And the tithe was, again, something that was supposed to be given to basically help the people who performed all of the religious duties, to help them get by, because they didn't even technically have their own land, and they pretty much subsisted off of the people's offerings. Yeah, I just thought I would mention that for anybody who might be watching and doesn't know what all that was supposed to be. So, yeah. Not too much else to say to introduce this, so here we go. 2 Chronicles, chapter 32. After Hezekiah had faithfully carried out his work, King Sennacherib of Assyria invaded Judah. He laid siege to the fortified towns, giving orders for his army to break through their walls. When Hezekiah realized that Sennacherib also intended to attack Jerusalem, he consulted with his officials and military advisors, and they decided to stop the flow of the springs outside the city. They organized a huge work crew to stop the flow of the springs, cutting off the brook that ran through the fields. For they said, "Why should the kings of Assyria come here and find plenty of water?" Then Hezekiah worked hard at repairing all the broken sections of the wall, erecting towers, and constructing a second wall outside the first. He also reinforced the supporting terraces in the city of David and manufactured large numbers of weapons and shields. He appointed military officers over the people and assembled them before him in the square at the city gate. Then Hezekiah encouraged them by saying, "Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Syria or his mighty army, for there is a power far greater on our side. He may have a great army, but they are merely men. We have the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles for us." Hezekiah's words greatly encouraged the people. Alright. Pausing there because there's another subsection coming up in the chapter. So, I do find it a little bit surprising that Hezekiah kind of waited until he knew Sennacherib was going to attack Jerusalem to do all this stuff. Like, wouldn't you think he kind of should have been preparing to, like, help the other towns as well? Then again, you know, with Assyria having already conquered the other kingdom that was, like, the rest of the tribes of God's people, maybe focusing their efforts on the capital city was about the only realistic chance they had. Of course, that shouldn't really be a limiting factor, as he's talking about, you know, having the Lord on their side. But also from a practical standpoint, it could have easily spread them thinner and made them easier to conquer, essentially. You know, would have made it easier for the Assyrians to defeat them, being spread out in such a way. But they stopped up the water that flowed outside of the city. Sorry. So they stopped up the water that flowed outside of the city because they knew that that was going to be the strategy, to come and kind of like lay siege to Jerusalem in this case, which generally meant like blocking off everything else that would have come from outside to try and essentially, like, weaken the people in the city by starving them. And then, of course, Hezekiah fortified defenses along the walls, had another wall built, apparently, and, yeah, just really focusing on, like, you know, being able to defend themselves from a practical standpoint before the Assyrians got there, at which point then God could, like, kind of take over and, you know, give them whatever victory was needed. So that's, like, that's one of those things where some people tend to, like, go to one extreme or the other, where they're so practically minded, that they just do everything they know they can, and anything that happens, they just kind of associate with their own preparation, lack thereof, if it's a failure or whatever like that. And then other people will take the opposite extreme and be like, hey, you know what? God's got this. I'm not going to prepare in any way for what I know is coming at me. I'm just going to let God handle it all. Jesus, take the wheel kind of situation to the extreme. Hezekiah is walking a middle ground here. Anyway, looking at chat, you know, starving people out is the worst possible method to get people out of any settlement. I mean, worst possible. I'm not entirely sure in what way you mean there, Owl. Whether it's, like, most inhumane is what you mean, or, like, just the worst strategy. But I mean, obviously, if the people die of starvation within the city, then they're not going to be leaving the city because they're dead within the city. But again, the point is weakening them, I suppose. Of course, that probably leads to an eventual breaking point, you might say, where people will just feel like they have nothing to lose, and so they'll go out in, you know, desperation and do whatever they think they can. Probably all the more aggressively for that reason. Yeah, there was usually there might have been a little bit more to these sieges than just the starvation aspect of things, but that was definitely part of it. But in any case, the water was stopped up outside the city so that it would make it more difficult for the Assyrians to continually occupy that city. It's even evidence that in the founding settlements of North America, when the Native Americans tried starving them out, the settlers resorted to... Yeah, there is that kind of stuff. Which, I mean, still serves the purpose of weakening the town, but also, like, kind of, when people get really desperate, they'll do things to either end it quicker with more casualties for the sieging side, or they'll do desperate things like that to prolong it even further and make it even more troubling for the attacking side in that way. All right, real quick before I move on, there's a note here in verse 5 when it's talking about supporting terraces. Hebrew says the millow. Now, the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain, but I guess based on context clues and other references and things like that, that's the educated guess, for lack of a better way to put it, of the translators as far as what the millow means. But, all right, so defenses have been reinforced in Jerusalem. He's got the army together and has encouraged them to not be afraid of the Assyrians despite their great numbers, because they have God on their side. And then we come to verse 9. While King Sennacherib of Assyria was still besieging the town of Lachish, he sent his officers to Jerusalem with this message for Hezekiah and all the people in the city. This is what King Sennacherib of Assyria says. What are you trusting in that makes you think you can survive my siege of Jerusalem? Hezekiah has said, the Lord our God will rescue us from the king of Assyria. Surely Hezekiah is misleading you, sentencing you to death by famine and thirst. Don't you realize that Hezekiah is the very person who destroyed all the Lord's shrines and altars? He commanded Judah and Jerusalem to worship only at the altar at the temple and to offer sacrifices on it alone. Surely you must realize what I and the other kings of Assyria before me have done to all the people of the earth. Were any of the gods of those nations able to rescue their people from my power? Which of their gods was able to rescue its people from the destructive power of my predecessors? What makes you think your God can rescue you from me? Don't let Hezekiah deceive you. Don't let him fool you like this. I say it again, no god of any nation or kingdom has ever yet been able to rescue his people from me or my ancestors. How much less will your God rescue you from my power? So, yeah, long story short, the Assyrian king here is basically flipping Hezekiah's ideas completely on their head, or at least trying to, and being like, he says your God can save you, but none of these other gods have saved their people. What, do you really think your God has any kind of chance when these other people's gods failed them? And now, it seems to me he's mistaken about the stuff it mentions in verse 12. Because he's saying that Hezekiah destroyed, or miraculously had other people destroy, the Lord's shrines and altars. But those were not shrines. I mean, according to the way that it was worded in earlier verses, those were shrines and altars to other gods, not the Lord. But perhaps because of the recent history, he and some other kings might have assumed that those other altars and shrines and things like that were for their god. But no, that wasn't the case. Just because people were worshiping at those altars and shrines doesn't mean that they were places dedicated to the Lord. In fact, there was mention of it not being that way for multiple chapters before we even got to Hezekiah. He also might have made some assumptions based on the other tribes of Israel that he had already conquered, because they didn't worship the Lord really much at any given point in that separate kingdom's existence. But essentially he's trying to convince the people of Jerusalem to just give up, get out alive while they still can, is kind of what he thinks he's going to convince them to do. But of course, that really just makes it easier for him in the long run, because then more of his opposition has given up. So he's got fewer people to fight, and yeah. Anyway. Okay, so after that kind of threat, we'll say, we get to verse 16. And Sennacherib's officers further mocked the Lord God and his servant Hezekiah, heaping insult upon insult. The king also sent letters scorning the Lord, the God of Israel. He wrote, "Just as the gods of all the other nations failed to rescue their people from my power, so the God of Hezekiah will also fail." The Assyrian officials who brought the letters shouted this in Hebrew to the people gathered on the walls of the city, trying to terrify them so it would be easier to capture the city. These officers talked about the God of Jerusalem as though he were one of the pagan gods made by human hands. Then King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, cried out in prayer to the God of heaven, to God in heaven. And the Lord sent an angel who destroyed the Assyrian army with all its commanders and officers. So Sennacherib was forced to return home in disgrace to his own land. And when he entered the temple of his God, some of his own sons killed him there with a sword. That is how the Lord rescued Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from King Sennacherib of Assyria and from all the others who threatened them. So there was peace throughout the land. From then on, King Hezekiah became highly respected among all the surrounding nations, and many gifts for the Lord arrived at Jerusalem, with valuable presents for King Hezekiah too. So, the officers essentially took Sennacherib's threats and insults and just tried to amplify them more and more. Sort of like some political commentators will do, sort of parroting, but then even going beyond what their favorite politicians say. Now, it's interesting. I guess they specifically sent their message in Hebrew in order to try their best to make sure that the people of Jerusalem understood it. Now, the Hebrew wording there says in the dialect of Judah. So, they might have already been communicating in Hebrew in a way. But, dialects are a little bit different than full-blown languages. You'll get some slightly different uses of certain words, different accents and things like that, all within the same language and whatnot. So I guess it's more that kind of distinction. And that's honestly even more specific, because it says the dialect of Judah. That's who they were attacking here. So again, still kind of holds true to the same point. They were doing their best, these Assyrian officials, to make sure that their message and their insults were understood by the people of Judah, Jerusalem in particular. But essentially then Hezekiah and Isaiah pray about it, and it just says the Lord sent an angel who destroyed the Assyrian army. Obviously not like 100% of it, because some people still went back, including King Sennacherib. But, like, it doesn't mention any fighting on the part of Hezekiah or the people of Jerusalem. It's also not necessarily as descriptive as some of the times previously that God had just sort of delivered the people without them having to fight. But still. And then it mentions Sennacherib being killed by his own sons. I think there's actually a little more detail on that in 2 Kings, if I recall correctly. But definitely feel free to go back to that and see if I'm right on that. So Assyrian invasion unsuccessful, at least, didn't conquer the capital city, thus the kingdom as a whole has not fallen. And I guess because of how much the Assyrians had done to surrounding people and kingdoms and things like that, the fact that he, and really more accurately God, was able to, defeat the Assyrians, it was just like, hold up, this guy has actually knocked our big problem down a peg. Thanks for that. And so there are gifts presented because of that. Okay, you know what? I'm going to pause my recording real quick here just to go ahead and run the Twitch ads that are coming up here so I won't have them necessarily interrupting what I'm doing. Once the ads are done, I'll go ahead and do some of the exercise stuff. And then we'll get back into the Bible study. Alright, which exercise do I want to do first? I guess I could start with the jumping jacks. Or maybe I should do the planking first, because then I can, set that up while the ads are running. Sure, why not? Okay. Set this out. So arms aren't going to be on the hard floor, at least not directly. Okay. Get my phone here for a timer. Set that to 30 seconds. Okay. Just got a few seconds left on those Twitch ads, it looks like. Okay. Yeah, I realized I was kind of mid-Bible study, but I was like, hey, we're in a break. We're in an ad break. Let me set up for exercise stuff. Now that I'm set up, I'm just like, I might as well do it. So, 30 seconds of planking coming at ya. Here we go. Alright. Yeah, so after I finish this up, obviously we'll continue with the Bible study. Looks like we got maybe a third of the chapter to go, possibly even less than that. But 30 seconds actually felt kind of short there, but no big deal. Alright. So then... Oh. By the way, Owl, in case you couldn't tell, after the Bible study stuff, we're going to be getting into what I think is one of your favorite games that I play, kicking it back with some PowerWash Simulator. That is not the right window there. Okay. Yay for streaming logistics. Okay. Now, the Bible study will continue. Alright, yeah, I don't think I had any other thoughts on that section. So, we'll continue with verse 24. About that time, Hezekiah became deathly ill. He prayed to the Lord, who healed him and gave him a miraculous sign. But Hezekiah did not respond appropriately to the kindness shown him, and he became proud. So the Lord's anger came against him and against Judah and Jerusalem. Then Hezekiah humbled himself and repented of his pride, as did the people of Jerusalem. So the Lord's anger did not fall on them during Hezekiah's lifetime. Hezekiah was very wealthy and highly honored. He built special treasury buildings for his silver, gold, precious stones, and spices, and for his shields and other valuable items. He also constructed many storehouses for his grain, new wine, and olive oil. And he made many stalls for his cattle and pens for his flocks of sheep and goats. He built many towns and acquired vast flocks and herds, for God had given him great wealth. He blocked up the upper spring of Gihon and brought the water down through a tunnel to the west side of the city of David. And so he succeeded in everything he did. However, when ambassadors arrived from Babylon to ask about the remarkable events that had taken place in the land, God withdrew from Hezekiah in order to test him and to see what was really in his heart. The rest of the events of Hezekiah's reign and his acts of devotion are recorded in the vision of the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, which is included in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. When Hezekiah died, he was buried in the upper area of the royal cemetery, and all Judah and Jerusalem honored him at his death. And his son Manasseh became the next king. Looking at chat, PowerWash isn't my favorite. I just know and watch like 4 streamers that play it. Okay, I don't know, it just seems to me in my recollection that we've had some pretty good discussions while I've played PowerWash Simulator. So, anyway. Maybe that's why I thought that. Okay, so after God rescued Jerusalem from the Assyrians, it says Hezekiah became deathly ill. And as I recall from 2 Kings, or as I think I recall, he was like he had actually been told by a prophet, possibly even Isaiah, that he was going to die of that illness. But then he prayed about it, and God decided to keep him alive another 15 years because he had been so dedicated. So that was actually, I mean, I think it said back in, what was the first, or did it describe it here? No? Okay. Trying to think of how long it said Hezekiah was king. Ruled in Jerusalem 29 years. So really, like, all things said, he hadn't even gone through half of his eventual reign as king when he became ill like this. And then he got healed and basically had another half of his time as king that he remained alive. And I'm thinking there could have been more details on this stuff in 2 Kings, as far as, you know, the pride that came in, and you know, then Hezekiah humbling himself. Bleh, man, I really stumbled over that for a sec. And if this Isaiah is the same Isaiah that has a book of the Bible written and named after him, then there's probably even more detail in that. But that comes notably later in the Bible. Okay. So Hezekiah continues to build things and acquire wealth and power, I guess you could say. But then these ambassadors from Babylon come around, and this just says God tested him in that situation. Again, if I recall correctly, what happened there was he essentially showed these ambassadors, like, all sorts of stuff about his palace and the temple and all these things that gave them notable knowledge that then eventually gets used against Judah and Jerusalem in particular. But that I guess, sorry, but I guess the recap of that is still to come. In case it's not, though, like, Babylon is the kingdom that eventually takes over and rules Judah, possibly even then takes over what the Assyrians had previously conquered, and that Babylon is the empire that caused the exile that God's people were currently experiencing as these chronicles were being told to them. Anyway, not a whole lot to say about this last little section summarizing his reign and his death and whatnot. I assume the upper area of the royal cemetery was, like, kind of where they put the best kings. But other than that, just says his son became the next king. No surprise there. And that kind of does it for chapter 32 here. Okay. So, planned Bible study portion of the evening is done. Those of you who haven't tuned in real recently might note that this whole thing I got going on in this scene is now different because I have a chat window showing instead of just my webcam. But, I probably want to shift myself over this way a little bit. At least my microphone and myself, in a way. So that I am in position for the power washing. I don't think PowerWash Sim doesn't really have too much of its own background music, so I think I'll keep mine going in the meantime. Did you get it to not show spam messages after being deleted? It meaning the chat? I still don't think I've quite figured that out, honestly. If not, I can always just spam messages to get it off the screen. Yeah, I don't know. It's still a little odd how the multi-chat feature seems to even potentially show some stuff that Twitch itself would block. Anyway. Yes, I see what you're doing there. And yeah, if we really want to clear that out. I mean, so far, I haven't seen anything stick around in the chat window that is like, you know, really not wanted. You know, in terms of being like kind of inappropriate or whatever you might say. Or, you know, foul or anything like that. Anyway, okay. Alright. So I'm here cleaning. It's called a Halloween house. I realize I'm a week late for Halloween, but that, you know, they made such a mess around here that I gotta clean it up now. Uh, 10% or 2 items, okay. This might not be the best combination to have for the steps here, but it seems to be working fairly well. Well, I don't know if I want to get the steps completely clean. So this might be a decent combination of nozzle and extension and whatnot for other stuff. Well, okay. Didn't mean to do that, but it happened anyway. So this sign said only tricks on top of it. And looks like it's supposed to be sort of witchy recipes, you might say. Just going around cleaning bits of random things to try to increase that percentage. You need me to do anything specific for mod duties? The last person I moderated for asked me every once in a while to say a welcome message to lurkers. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you need to say anything specifically to lurkers or anything like that, but I would just appreciate someone helping to keep the chat active, I guess. There are times when kind of gets dead, and once it gets dead, it seems more likely to stay dead. So, yeah, that's, doggone it. Accidentally got another ding on this. Anyway, yeah, Seth, meanwhile, is kind of like my randomizer of things. So at least in this case, chat's probably not going to be too dead because he'll be communicating what gets randomized here. So I guess Nozzle has 4 possibilities. Sorry, Extension has 4 possibilities. Nozzle has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then if we get nozzle number 5, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's realistically only one actual cleaner that would do anything here, even though it shows 6. So, for 6 would be the turbo nozzle. Was there anything else? So, yeah. Okay, so length is 4, nozzle 6. Oh, right. 4, I mean, the soap doesn't really matter in this case. How many? Okay, so 3 is the number of items that I would need to complete before moving on to another combination. Right, gotcha. I could practically draw with this if I wanted to. And I had a dirty enough surface. Hey. Okay, can't quite make it happen. I was gonna try and like write Matt with it on there. This is also actually surprisingly easy to clean stuff way up high. Probably just because of the extension length and then the, like... I mean, the turbo nozzle is, like, one of the really focused ones. It's basically a 0 degree that also kind of twirls around. Alright, well, we reached another multiple of 10%. Rooms are quite heavy going. So, for nozzle number 7. Interesting. Soap doesn't really matter too much. 5 items to be cleaned, or another 10%. See, now this... we got the triple tip nozzle, which is essentially the 0 degree times 3. So able to, like, spread a little bit wider and clean like that much more of an area. It's a shame with as powerful as some of these nozzles and extensions are that, like, there still seems to be a very notable cutoff distance within very visible range. Like, I'm not cleaning anything there because I think I'm just too far away. So, yeah, let's see here. What kind of stuff could we talk about? Well, there's plenty of stuff we could talk about, but I don't know if everybody would necessarily want to get into certain topics. Oh, speaking of topics, hang on. I just realized I should change the category of my Twitch stream. See, now, right there, the message that's now showing up in chat was blocked by the bot thing, but it still shows up. I guess maybe if it's something that gets blocked by Twitch itself, then it won't show up. But if it's blocked by, like, the Seri bot, that doesn't quite count the same way. So it'll still show up in the multi-chat feature. I don't know. Hide the spam chat from the screen. Appreciate it, Owl. Yeah, nobody's gonna go to that site. I think pretty much anybody who does anything with live streaming knows that those are all just scams. The system works. Yes, it does. I am literally just cleaning random things all over the place. Should I be? I don't know. But that's just kind of what's striking my fancy at the moment. Yeah, I forgot there were all these, like, you know, headstones and things like that as well. Well, that side clearly says happy. I imagine it'll spell out Halloween on the other side here. Yep. Just, these ones are a little more staggered. What are the topics you wanted to talk about? I mean, once might be a strong word in this case, but I know there's certainly the recent election results that could be talked about. I don't necessarily know all the details from all the different states and whatnot, but I know New York and California basically went way, let's just say, very Democrat-leaning, very not big fans of Trump in how they voted. Yeah, I have stopped watching for the moment because I hit 10%. Awaiting the next combination of things. Okay, well, practically the same thing. So I can just keep rolling right along. Doo-dee-doo-doo. Re-rolling. Oh, okay. I only got 1% like that anyway. So, still 4, 6. So it doesn't really matter. 1 item cleaned before we change over. I want to talk about interesting politics. It was bonfire night yesterday. Effigies of our current prime minister were burned on the... Huh. I wonder how people feel about him. Actually, is the current prime minister male? I realized maybe I shouldn't assume that. Because other civilized countries actually have women in their highest offices from time to time. Okay. This could take a while at this rate to get to the next 10%. Might just clean something off completely and move on to the next combination of things. But, like... I might have seen it recently. Trump totally humiliated him in the funniest way possible. Gathering or something that the UK wasn't even invited to. Huh. Yeah, this... There we go. Okay, ding. Yeah, so I guess I saw a little bit of the speech that the newly elected mayor of New York City, the speech that he gave, he directed it very much at Donald Trump, and honestly, sorry, I don't know a whole lot about the guy other than he's a Democrat. He seems to be, you know, following more of the current, you know, Democrat policy positions. He himself is also apparently Muslim, which, of course, the upset Republicans immediately wanted to label him a jihadist purely because he's Muslim, as far as I can tell. And, like, it's crazy to me how quickly people will resort to smearing the names of others when things don't go their way. It's funny, actually. I watched video dozens of times. Some people did AI edits. Favorite is when our prime minister says... But yeah. Oh, also there was California, and part of their election. Part of California's election cycle, or whatever votes they had. Part of that involved a vote on whether or not to redraw their, like, congressional districts and stuff. You know, so basically, like, redraw the lines of, like, whose votes count for which area and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, Republicans are upset about that because the idea was, with, you know, the governor being a Democrat, that it would be redrawn in a way that would favor Democrats. Although, like, there's supposed to be an independent committee, I think, in California that does that. So, I don't know how they would come to that conclusion. Also, we have reached 60% completion. But, like, meanwhile, a bunch of other states in the U.S. did this whole redistricting thing without having any kind of a vote on it. And they don't necessarily all even have committees on, you know, independent committees that decide on the redistricting. Oh, sorry. Okay. See, now, since I have a stone cleaner, I feel like it only makes sense to actually work on cleaning some stone stuff. Since that's really the main thing that this nozzle will actually be any good for. Man, this cleaning liquid seems to run out quickly. There we go, jeez. Yeah, I suppose I really should actually try and get some stuff clean here. Suppose at this point it would be easier to focus on some of these, gravestones here, although I'm not exactly getting any quick dings from these, it seems. Okay. Maybe some of the rocks here. Okay, and like right before I run out of liquid, I run out of cleaning liquid, I completed enough objects to move on to another combination. Have I read any good books lately? So, I mean, right now the main book of any kind that I'm reading is actually something for like a men's group that I'm part of. So, I mean, it's also like a, you know, Christian faith-based sort of book. So, I mean, it's good for men who are Christians, but I could definitely see people who don't fall into those categories. It's just not really meant for them, so maybe it wouldn't be so good. Yeah, this combination is downright terrible now. Can't even clean something I'm right up against and taking multiple passes over. Yeah, unless I want to be stuck like this for a long time, which I don't. I think that might have to come down to a reroll. Anyway, in case you're wondering, the book that we're studying and discussing and all that kind of stuff in this group is called Every Man a Warrior, which, of course, it's got to sound all manly and stuff, but it's supposed to be about, you know, how to live out your faith life better and be like, you know, a better father figure, family leader, all sorts of stuff like that. That one was actually free. Every once in a while, my iPad bugs me to offer me free books. Most of them I don't bother, but it's about time I'm going to start adding Christmas books. Book isn't that great, and I've read better, but it's free. Those Christmas Hallmark movies, so anything. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an audience for that out there. I'm not sure I am that audience in particular, but I'm not going to knock on somebody else for enjoying that. Alright, let's see what kind of stuff I might be able to clean with this combination here. Well, at least there's some actual cleaning that gets done. As opposed to the absolutely horrendous soap nozzle with no soap. Like, seriously, the soap nozzle without soap is like maybe even less effective than if you were to just straight up dump water on these surfaces. It's like not even as strong as a shower. It's like a mist. They're cheesy as heck. You can see where it's going within the first 10 minutes, but it's... yeah. I'll take that over the absolute political brain rot cranked out right now. Yeah, fair enough on that. Well, there was an unintentional ding, but that is one. But yeah, if I do get tired of this combination, I can just focus on a few things and at least actually get them clean. Well, since we're on the topic of Christmas movies and stuff like that, makes me wonder what some people's favorite Christmas movies might be. Oh, there's a second ding. Also, clean, family-friendly movies that don't need dark. Yeah. Definitely, you know, appreciate when a movie can be good and still clean. Also, I mean, kind of funny we're talking about clean movies when we're, you know, when I'm playing a game about cleaning. Hang on a second. Pick up and place. What equipment? Oh, geez. I didn't think it would have let me move that from all that distance. What? Okay, fine. You go there. Love Bad Santa. Okay. Now that one is not clean. At least not in terms of language stuff. If I recall correctly. I haven't really watched it too much myself. I don't know. Personally, I'd say my favorite Christmas movie is probably, I guess I'd have to say Jim Carrey's Grinch. Or the one that stars him as the Grinch. Not like he directed the movie per se, but you get my point. But as far as like actually kind of more serious, for lack of a better word, Christmas movies, or at least like not comedy ones, I've actually, in sort of recent years, gained a bit of an appreciation for It's a Wonderful Life. And not necessarily just because it has, you know, like, references to a god, or, you know, not because of any of its like religious aspects. Just kind of a good story overall, in my opinion. Bad Santa is foul, poor taste, offensive, and completely inappropriate, but it's got such a wonderful core plot that it... I do find it interesting when some of the more adult-oriented movies like that will still try to have, you know, I'm not necessarily going to say a good moral story, but, you know, I mean, just because it's an adult movie doesn't mean that it's necessarily, like, that's the only point of it. How many dings so far? I think I've only gotten 2, actually. This probably won't be a bad combination overall to try and get to the next multiple of 10. Well, there's a third ding. Not intentional, but it still counts. As they all do all the time. Because I'm not going to cheat like that. As far as other Christmas movies, I don't know if there are too many other Christmas movies I watch on a regular basis. I mean, I end up probably seeing Elf more years than not, and, you know, I like it, I suppose. I just am not as big a fan of it as some people seem to be. Okay, we're at 70%. I'm like, what is going on with my cords here? I don't know. Okay. Set a timer for 2 minutes, clean as much as possible, but any ding instantly ends the race. Oh, jeez. Kinda does have a good moral. Willie, the main character, actually turns his life around and becomes a better person. Has this kid named Thurman. At first thinks he's Santa. Willie basically mooches off him, his grandma, but he ends up becoming friends with Thurman and wanting to look out for him. Thurman makes him want to be better. Okay. Well, I suppose I will go with my typical combination here, although, yeah. Soap doesn't really matter. And I'm trying to clean as much as I can in 2 minutes. But especially with as far along as I am, it's quite likely that I will get something to go ding before too long. But okay. Yeah. Alright, well, I have my 2-minute timer set. Starting it now. Not really too many bigger objects than, like, the main house building here. I'm also intentionally cleaning kind of haphazardly, so I'm not getting, like, the bulk of any particular object cleaned. I honestly don't know if I'm even gonna make it to 10% within 2 minutes, though. I mean, as it stands, I'm already down to 30 seconds. Well, phooey. Falling down didn't help. Oh well, 2 minutes are up anyway. And I got 5%. Okay, so 4, 3, 4. So I have to clean pumpkins, including this pumpkin. Does this pumpkin count? I wasn't sure if we were counting pumpkin houses or whatever you'd call that. Alright. Sorry, the game calls it a pumpkin shed. Okay. That makes more sense. It's a little too small to really be a full-blown house on its own. Well, I don't know. Maybe there are tiny houses out there that are, about this size. That was the base of the pumpkin shed. I'm hoping that still counts as a thing that is a pumpkin-related item. Problem I was having Skyrim. I vaguely recall something about retiring a Skyrim character. Pumpkin Shed has more. Yeah. I mean, shoot, I could get all my dings just on the Pumpkin Shed, really, if I wanted to. I'm not gonna do that. Kind of decided I'm going to nerf her. See where she develops and see if that helps. I should get some kind of ladder or something. If I'm gonna keep cleaning the pumpkin shed anyway. Yeah, so, on the matter of other games, all I know when I was at first recently considering what game I was going to start playing next. You suggested the Digimon Story Time Stranger game. I was kind of between that and Borderlands 4, and it turned out Borderlands 4 went on sale, so I got that. Oh, man. Sorry about the yawning, but you know, early work schedule. The issue is that she's so overpowered, it's quite daunting to get. Even is supposed to have the best armor right off the bat, not having all that. Did I? I don't remember that. I'm kind of avoiding that game until I could. I definitely at least remember you saying something about Time Stranger. There, Owl. Yeah, okay. Ad break coming up in 3 minutes. Or whenever I decide to roll it. Probably asked if you were going to stream it or something. Yeah. And again, I was very much considering Time Stranger. Just as I said, Borderlands 4 went on sale, so figured I'd save myself a little money between the two and get the one that was going to cost me a bit less. I'm sorry, Seth, what are you saying about the pumpkin? Dude, you said I had 3 dings, and then I got one more after that, so I didn't think... I thought I was kind of on pause for a bit. Or were you really just wanting me to complete the pumpkins? Yeah, because I got both of these down here. I think it was this... Well, I don't know. One of them came a little bit later after you had said I got 3. Oh, man. See if you recognize what I'm asking you. Let's see here. So, 4. 5 doesn't matter in this case. 4 things, or what's the +1 even mean? Like, if I figure out what you're talking about and clean that, then I get another ding? Or I mean, there's these that are part of the word happy. Okay, so if I end up cleaning all of these, then we'll go to 5 dings instead of 4. Because then all of these will be clean. Oh, that one's actually already clean, I guess. Okay, whatever. Looks like ads are rolling. Alright. So this is where I hop back over to this screen. Probably gotta roll up my workout mat here. Because I don't know if I want to be doing jumping jacks on this thing. And I don't really have too much other floor space that is within view of the camera. Oh, man. So, not that I'm planning on ending the stream real soon, but I will admit I'm a bit on the tired side of things, so I don't think we'll end up going too much more than another hour. Just putting that out there. Okay, so I never changed the pinned comment. Oh well, jumping jacks. I did not do the jumping jacks.
Let's go.
So, jumping jacks, sets of 4, at least 16. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you know what, 17, 18, 19. I'll go all the way to 20, just to have a nicer, more even, more round, one might say, number. Okay. Yeah, sorry, the ads were going the whole time that the happy discussion thing was going on. So, yeah. So yeah, did the Y, did the P, working on the A now. Was the H already clean? Or are we just not including that in our... No, it's not clean yet, but... The H is not required, but now I feel like it's weird to specifically leave that one not clean. When we're specifically making efforts to clean the other ones, you know? Like, did it really have to not be the H? Anyway, Seth is trying to give me, like, extra challenges and stuff in the game, you know. Specific things to clean. Speaking of, yes. Hydration from Owl. Here we go. This one's for you. Alright. And there's another ding. The list, eh? There's still a lot. Apothecary. I assume the apothecary is like one of these things on the side. Probably that. Yep. That's the apothecary, alright. Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff around there. Cauldron. Conservatory. Not quite sure which building would be considered the conservatory. Oh, probably the, like, greenhouse looking area in the back. Okay. 2, 4. Soap doesn't really matter there. 2 things. Oh, I mean, you mentioned anything about potions, my mind goes to the cauldron here. So, while we were on the subject of other games that I might play at some point, I did remember that I got a comment on a video of mine suggesting a game for me to play. I might actually want to check that out at some point. Okay, look, Seth, I appreciate a little bit of challenge here. I'm a little tired, and these riddles are not exactly, like, something my brain wants to go through at the moment. Unless that cauldron thing was all that there was to the riddle, but you keep mentioning the potions, so it gives me the impression you were thinking of more. I mean, maybe this board here that has potion stuff on it. Like, what is even still dirty on this thing? Oh, there's that. Fair enough, I guess I sort of halfway thought that too. Anyway, so a viewer of one of my videos suggested I play a game called Bug Fables. Based on what I could find, at least, you know, on my Xbox in, like, the shop or whatever other information it shows like that. It seems... it gives off very Paper Mario type vibes. Like, it's even animated in a similar kind of, like, 2D characters in a 3D space sort of way. And with that, A, not being a recent game, and B, not being like a big budget AAA kind of game, wouldn't necessarily cost as much as some of the other games that I would possibly want to buy. Although I still have other games in just my own kind of collection backlog thing that I, in some way, shape, or form, already have, or at least have access to, you could say. Like, I had previously played Assassin's Creed and have multiple other games in that series that I could just play at some point. Might need to like re-download them or whatever. Was that my 5th or 6th ding there? I got the 3 stools. There was a door down there that I got. And I think there was one other thing before coming up here and getting the lamp, so I'm thinking that was 6. Four. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ugh. Yeah, like, basically anything with the soap nozzle is going to be the worst possible thing for progress. I do actually see some dirt being removed here, though. So maybe if I just stay up really close like this and move kind of slowly, it'll still sort of work. And then eventually I will have this thing clean and can move on. But I still don't know if it's really worth it, so to speak. Like you can see as I highlight the dirt, it is very slowly getting rid of it. But very slowly. So slowly I'm not sure I want to keep dealing with it. Honestly, from this point forward, we may just want to ignore the soap nozzle, because I'm almost out of stone cleaner, too. Like, I barely have any of that left. 3. 3. So it doesn't really matter for the moment. Well, yeah, with the number of, with the number of items fully cleaned only being set to 1, like, that's, generally means I'm not gonna get super far. The, nozzle and extension combination actually is pretty good here, but I'm probably not gonna get a chance to really take advantage of it. Well, and even if I did, as much as I could without getting any dings, I'm still just shy of 80%, at which point we'd be switching off again. Well, okay, unintentional ding on the doorknob there. I'm like, should I just keep going since we're so close to a multiple of 10%? At 1, 7, 6, 6. Yeah, I can. It is quite likely that I will hit 80% before finishing 6 items, but that was 1. No, 2. 3. And again, 4, 5, 6. How? Well, Al, if it makes much difference to you, I don't think you need to feel too pressured to keep things rolling. I mean, you and Seth are 2 of 3 viewers on Twitch here. Although, who knows who might be just kind of, sort of lurking, for lack of a better word, on YouTube. Okay, 4, 3... Man. And then we reached 80%. Yeah, so as things currently stand, my weekly schedule pretty much boils down to, all right, Monday, work, and then dinner, and then church group. Tuesday, work, dinner, maybe a little more time, church group. Wednesday, work, dinner, probably do a little bit of editing stuff. Thursday, work, dinner, live stream. Friday, most of the time, no work, but get groceries, do any other errands that I might have in mind that would take me elsewhere. Record stuff for collab channel, another live stream, dinner, probably go play Magic the Gathering. Saturday, edit day. Sunday is church and visit family and do laundry. And there's my weekly schedule these days, for anyone who might have been wondering. Okay. Choose 2 items, eh? Oh, jeez. Let's go with this, conservatory large roof window. Wherever that is. And then, to keep it kind of random, let's do the entrance door frame. So I imagine, yeah, that was pretty obvious. Entrance door frame. And so the other thing that I picked was the conservatory large roof window. Ah, that, okay. 2160, okay. Doggone it, I keep doing that first. 2, 1. Soap doesn't really matter. It might be tricky. Yeah, might be, but okay, so this frame was one of the items in question. Of course, in talking about my schedule, I did also kind of remember, I don't know for sure when it, well, shoot, didn't mean to get part of the door itself, but that was something that just kind of happened as I was cleaning the frame there. Okay, anywho, schedule stuff, yeah. Not sure when, or even for sure if at this point, but at some point there has been word going around where I work that the overall schedule could be changing. Like, it might, instead of the current 4 10-hour shifts for, you know, the production workers or whatever you want to call us, it could end up going to your more stereotypical 5 8-hour shifts. And if that happens, I've got to just completely, well, maybe not that completely, but I'll have to reconfigure some things in my schedule a bit. Like, Fridays in particular would have to change a lot. And I might even in that case have to, like, go back to doing sort of the combined Bible study and game recording session stream and leave that as my only one for the week, because I outside of Saturdays, I'm not entirely sure how consistently I would have 3-hour chunks of time available. Okay, you know what? Gonna do a little bit of this, not leave the screen shaking so much. I imagine this is probably better from a viewing perspective, but especially when I gotta keep an eye out on all sorts of things in the game. I don't know. This seems preferred to me as the player, even though this is probably a better viewing experience. Four. Very good. And 2. 6 doesn't matter. 3. Conservatory. Small. Okay. Based on the descriptions of this thing, yeah, small roof window. I was figuring out that that was probably what you meant. Okay, well, there's that. And then 2 other things. I guess in theory, any 2 other things. Or I get to 90%. Actually, I don't know. Maybe I have an idea as to why this, as the gamer in control, feels more comfortable or just better for me visually. And I'm wondering if that has anything to do with, you know, the times when I have played first-person shooters and they run the same thing like this. The same, you know, camera angle change style in general when you're looking around. But that's because in those games you have to see what you're shooting. If I tried to play a first-person shooter game and shoot things more like this, I mean, yeah, it can be done, but it feels way more awkward. All right. Okay, so kind of random note. For those of you who don't know much about my live streaming background music, literally all of it, except maybe one, is taken from YouTube's audio library. But basically every single one of the songs in the playlist I downloaded to use at the end screens of, you know, when I played through particular games. Like, as I was making edited videos of Digimon Survive. Well, maybe not the whole playthrough, but definitely when the video where I got to the very end of the story, I used this song during the end card. Actually, okay. Not quite every song in this playlist fits that description. Because there were like 2 others from the same band or group or whatever that did that one that I just also downloaded because I was like, hey, that was a good song. Let me see what else they have. And yeah, just wound up getting 2 others. This particular one, I guess, wasn't so much because of an end card, but it was because of a video edit. I wanted something that seemed really, like, fast-paced. As I was editing some moments in a game that I was sort of speeding up the footage to get through it quicker. So, like, literally, the base video I had playing at, like, 200 or 300% speed. Or maybe I should say 2 or 3 times speed. Just to kind of show what was going on while still, like, getting through it quickly. In a moment when it otherwise would have seemed a bit slow. Also, didn't necessarily want the sped up audio from all that. So, in order to have some audio in the meantime, downloaded this song. In fact, I'm not sure before this one if I had even downloaded much, or anything for that matter, from YouTube's audio library. Alright. So now I basically got to get another 4% or get a ding on another item. Well, there's that for you. So choose 2 minutes to clean as much. All right, Owl. I appreciate you hanging around and even the lurk. Hope you have a good week or whatever if I don't catch you anymore before the end of the stream. Until we chat some more. Hope you have a good time. 2 minutes to clean as much as possible, but any ding on... So, a stone item. None of the items completely require any of the cleaners. Give you an extra minute at the end of the timer. I mean, like, if I really like the setup I have, wouldn't that just keep me going longer with what I want? Okay, well, tell you what, maybe I'll go with the short extension. Because not having any extension on some of this stuff would make it quite difficult. Okay, so 2 minutes plus then another added per stone item cleaned. Okay, well, 2 minutes starting now. And yes, I am specifically going for these because they're stone. And I would like to add more to the timer with this setup. So that's 1. 2. 3. 'Come on.
Okay, dude.
What do you mean? These are not plastic. What do you mean? You literally saw me using stone cleaner on these before. It says plastic? Huh. Okay. Definitely wouldn't have thought that was plastic. Oh well. So I get less time with this setup. Not like it's any worse off than I would have been otherwise. That's wood. Well, there's a stone thing. That's actually fully stone this time. Okay. What the... Alright, so... that was 1 extra minute then. For which I'll just be cleaning anything. So if I continue to clean more stone items, it'll... okay. Alright. Timer is set to 1 minute now. Here we go, I guess. Let's see how much I can maybe get some more actual stone cleaned here. That, I think, was wood. Somehow, none of this is being fully completed. And my minute is up. Yeah. Since none of these signs out here were technically stone, I definitely didn't go the way that I thought it would. Okay. 3, 2, 3 doesn't matter, 6. Or at least must specifically try to work in that pattern. I don't even know how much metal there is here. I mean, I guess there's that. Okay. Wood. Okay. Well, that was 2 wood things. But kind of at the same time, so unintentional there. Stone. What shall I clean that is made of stone? Also, are we still applying a, you know... Sorry. We still applying a change whenever I hit 90%? I guess all those are metal. Oh, come on. How did I not make that jump? How am I not making this jump now? I was literally just up there a moment ago. This game is being inconsistent, and it's annoying.
2 hours later.
Okay, wound up cleaning that thing, which was stone. Metal. Seems like all of these bases here are metal. Okay, so that was metal. Back to something wood. Okay, well, there's some wood. Stone. What to clean that stone? That's probably not going to make real great progress. Trying to go about it that way. Jeez. This thing goes even higher than I thought it did. Yeah, the chimney's stone. Of course. I didn't get the second stone object yet. Maybe that comment about the metal was from earlier. Trying to specifically clean the stone part of this. Not the metal pipe looking things. Okay, so there's that. And then I guess I could just clean one of these for the metal object. What? Not if I fall down like that. There's one. Okay. By the way, totally should unpin that message from a while ago, because I've done all the exercise. Okay, 3, 7. Oh, man. 1, 6. Plastic, glass. And then plastic and glass. And then 2 wood. I gotta say, if I was real adamant about making progress on these jobs in this game, I would be so annoyed at how much this slows me down. Glass. Glass, glass, glass. That's all clean. Huh. You see, now that's glass and metal. I think the idea here is more so to stick to something that's purely glass. Didn't mean to get that, but oh well, there was glass. Now I need another plastic part. Like pretty much any one of these signs that isn't totally clean yet, I guess. Okay. And another glass. Like, what part of the window itself is still dirty? Seems like it's mostly the frame. But okay. That counted for more glass. And then 2 wooden pieces, eh? Well, this is mostly wood, right? Oh, man. Or not. Not out of what's left, anyway. Yeah, no, that's... none of that's wood anymore that actually needs to be cleaned. Doorway. Entrance door is clean. Actually, pretty much the entire roof counts as wood, I think. Pumpkin shed apparently counts as multi-purpose, although there is the pumpkin shed door and frame. Okay, got that. I guess unintentionally the door handle at the same time. The jack-o'-lanterns, multi-purpose. I think anything that's not a really specific material gets filed under the multi-purpose category. Alright, you said keep going until 90%. So here I am still going. That's not gonna work. Well, that's not gonna work either if I fall. Come on, work with me here. Okay, 90%. Three, two, 5, 4. So yeah, that doesn't really matter. 4 items, okay. What do I have going on here? Long extension and 15-degree nozzle. Right. Jeez. And that was already 4 dings. That was what? 4 items in alpha. Oh, I didn't realize you meant 4 items in alphabetical order. Well, like, so what? Just, like, it has to be the first 4 items on this list? Okay, well, now that you explained that as I was asking. Technically saying by first letter only doesn't really make a difference, but I think I get what you're saying now. Okay. We do also have another ad break coming up here in just a minute. And I think once I finish that, like once we get on the other side of the ad break and I wrap up this particular set of stuff that we're doing with this equipment combination, that's probably going to have to do it for the stream. Again, after all that stuff. Didn't think I'd have to concentrate so hard just to work on getting toward the inside of this building. Clean the lights. There we go. Yeah. So I did the cauldron. Could do the conservatory base, I guess. Well, the conservatory is back this way. Base. See, now that says urban. Oh, that part's the conservatory. Okay, accidentally cleaned a small piece of trim. Okay. Man. So I got the... There's no D or E, so the next thing would have to be... something in the F category. Alright. Probably don't want to do any roof stuff. Front turret. Okay, so I cleared the C item. There's no D or E. So I'm trying to move on to F. I'm just trying to figure out where the front turret is now. Oh, it's this thing. Okay. Or front tower, I guess, might be what it said. Oh, okay. Front tower for the third one. And then G H. Because it was 4. Or no. Herb House Base. Let's go with that. Yeah, or I could do a Halloween sign, I guess. Which there should only be a couple of these left to clean. Like the E here. Okay, there's that. And I think that completes the task that was most recently rolled. So it is at this point that I will say I'm pretty tired. And we have reached our typical 3-hour threshold for the stream. So final roll, I guess, is that's setting us up for next time? Yeah. 5 doesn't really matter. But yeah. 1, 3. Okay. So there's that. And yeah, okay. I'm gonna be headed as straight to bed as possible after this. Not gonna lie, I've kind of been fighting to stay awake for a little bit. Okay. Well, that does it for tonight's stream. Thanks everybody for tuning in and watching, chatting. Any other ways you might have been involved? I'm just gonna try and figure out a raid target on Twitch while I wrap things up here. So next, well, the next stream I do is going to be tomorrow. I'll be playing more Borderlands 4. Essentially, we kind of made our home base and, well, not made, but found and established our home base, and we'll be branching out from there, trying to help some other people who responded to our, like, broadcast and said that they would like some help. That's about all I know as far as what's going to happen in Borderlands. Next week, more Bible study. Next Thursday, more Bible study. And not quite sure what I'll do after the Bible study. Might be Slay the Spire if I'm not in the middle of a run at that point. If I am, I might just bounce back to Hades, the game. So we're clear. Or the other. Yeah, I mean, there are other possibilities, I'm sure. I just am not sure which other you're thinking of at the moment. Oh, Gems of War. I mean, that was done somewhat recently. Actually, so I had a realization earlier today that in the future, really, the best time for me to do Gems of War within a stream would be, I mean, technically speaking, the day before whatever the first Friday of the month is. But we'll just say the first Thursday of the month, I guess, to keep it simpler. Although there are some cases where that's not quite true. Maybe, I don't know. But generally speaking, probably the first Thursday. And the reason for that being, the first Friday of each month in Gems of War is when they release a new mythic troop. And so if I do more stuff in Gems of War a little bit earlier that week, I get more resources, especially guild seals in particular, that could be used to give me more chances of getting the new mythic troop each month. And the guild seals in particular, like, there's a limit each week. But then if I hit that earlier... Anyway. Not saying that's for sure what I'm going to do and when I'm going to play Gems of War moving forward. But that would kind of be the best situation with only Gems of War in mind. Okay, anywho. Where to raid? Yeah, I don't know why, but at the moment, I kind of have... somebody I follow who's currently playing Pokemon, that's kind of what stands out to me at the moment. Specifically Pokemon Legends ZA, which I guess is the newest one. So, yeah. Alright, raid target picked. So that'll do it officially for me tonight. I hope you are all doing well. Hopefully I will see y'all soon for another stream. Feel free to check out YouTube content in between streams. But yeah, whatever ends up happening, till the next time I see y'all, stay cool everybody.